What's going on, Forcible players? Ryan Miles here from On Tilt Gaming, here with episode number 11 of the Daily Mileage. I do apologize for getting this out pretty late for you Americans and Europeans. As you may hear, my allergies are in full force, so I was kind of sleeping it off a little bit to pretty much no avail. So we'll go ahead and get through this as quickly as we can, so I'm not berating your ears for too long. So, back in 2016, a younger version of Ryan Miles was playing on Outer World, and I made a video analyzing why I thought the Feasting deck at the time, the CFC Feasting, was Tier 1, and kind of did an analysis on what it meant to be in Tier 1, and the anagram that I failed to come up with by making these terms to define what a Tier 1 deck was clue. Get a clue, right? It's consistency, a lack of hard counters, utility, and efficiency. So I'm going to use those terms from way back yonder, and I think they still apply today, and kind of talk about card evaluation, because I think card evaluation follows the same principles, right? Because you can't really build a good deck without a bunch of good cards in it, correct? And I mean, when you look at the top decks of even today, right, Scheherazade, it's consistent. Like, we got that out of the bag. Like, that thing that draws 2 cards on turn 1 every game, so consistency is no problem. Lack of hard counters. Best counter in the game is Shackles of Ice, and there ain't nothing you can do about them having access to their 3-mana 11/11, or at the very least, a 2-mana 7/7. And on top of that, they've got a bunch of addition removal they can just put in their deck in both New Frontiers and Wanderer, in the form of Cleaning Dollar, Dreams of Juliet. So there's really not any hard counters, only soft counters. Utility, like Scheherazade, like, we're talking about the same deck here, right? Like, you understand utility, like, that's this deck's main selling point. It has so much access to so many different things. And then last but not least, efficiency. It's got a 3-mana card that says Banish Resnare, discard a card. It's got 2-mana 10/10s. It's got 3-mana 11/11s. Most efficient deck that we've seen in a very long time. So I think Scheherazade really fits that bill for what is the analysis of Tier 1, and even pushes into Tier 0. So we're going to use those terms and talk about card analysis. Give me one second. Hopefully we don't have to do that too much, but moving on to cards. So consistency is mostly a deck concept. It's not really something you can apply too much to individual cards. So we're going to skip over that one and just go right on to a lack of hard counters. So historically, cards that have not had hard counters that have dominated formats are mostly rulers. You look at Bahamut, when there was no Death Scythe, that was it just ran rampant because there was not a card that existed that you could put in your deck to do anything about it. Reflect Refrain was the same way. You know, before we had Black Moonbeam, you had Barrier of Shadows, and that was mediocre, but it did something, but wasn't particularly great. Fair, before we had Last Days of Powerless Dragonoid, before we had Lorite, when they flipped their ruler, they were gonna have 4 counters, and they were going to get an enter ability unless you had a 2-mana Dawn of the Earth, and they were ramping because they were Fair deck, so it's really hard to have that mana open every single turn. So those are the things that had a lack of hard counters. Well, thankfully the rulers in this set don't seem to have that problem. The Time Spinning Witch is hard countered by aggro because it needs to have 10 freaking mana to be able to do its double flip and get into its endgame state. And then the Seal, Ancestor of the Priestess, the Phantom Wind Feasting, is pretty hard countered by Lorite. And for the time being, we still have Lorite, and I think because of the fact that they printed Lorite's 7 Disciples, I do not think they will be banning Lorite. So we do have hard counters for the rulers. There's really not anything I could say in this set that has a lack of hard counters, which is good. The closest thing I would say is maybe Ataraxia, City of Verdant Green, because it's not only is it, at worst, if your opponent plays a Lightning Cave or something, you're still just ramping with it, but it's not super powerful to just be a Magic Wetlands, right? So overall, pretty much no lack of hard counters in this set, which is good. It's good. Good job, Forcible. So then C has consistency, not really useful in a single card discussion. Lack of hard counters, that's L. Next up is utility. What cards have utility? Well, the Distortion of Time would be the one that comes to mind, just because you get to choose when you want to activate it. And this is kind of pushing it, right? It's not a super, it doesn't, it's got 2 effects, but it's not it's not really utility when one of them is just draw a card. The fact that you get to just leave it in your graveyard and then activate it if you have access to time mana, which I think is the real drawback of this card. In order to get the God's Art, I guess that's since I'm doing an audio podcast, the Distortion of Time is a card that lets you look at the top card of your deck, you may put it on the bottom, and you draw a card, and then it's got a God's Art that says when it's in your graveyard, you can pay blue, the new time mana, and 1 to make it so your opponent's cards don't untap. which is super good. And just the fact that it gets to sit in your graveyard and be threatening all the time is why I think it's got a lot of utility. It's really just a matter of having access to the time wheel. And then the other card that I think represents like a decent amount of utility in this set is Ray the Black Owl /0. I'm actually in love with this card. I think this might be my favorite card in the entire set, and it is like a core centerpiece of this really cool deck I want to talk to you guys about. It's a 2 mana, so on the front side, Ray the Black Owl is a 2 mana 5/7 with maybe flying. I'm going to look it up while I'm talking so that I can talk about it more effectively. So yeah, 2 mana 5/7 does not have flying. It's just a beast. It just says this card cannot be attacked. So it's already immune to stuff like the Whole Pig Squadron that Kirik is going to play. So you can't target attack it down. You have to use a removal spell. So in order to beat decks that are playing Ray the Black Owl, you have to run removal. Okay, and then that gets really counterintuitive because at the beginning of your main phase, you invert Ray the Black Owl, and it comes 0, which is an 8/9 flyer that says entities you control gain. Whenever this card is targeted by a spell or ability, cancel that spell or ability. This ability triggers only once per turn. So basically every single card you control, Magic Stones, Additions, J-Rule, or Resonators, gets a free Wind Secluded Refuge to the first card cast on it. So if you're running a lot of removal to make sure that when your opponent plays Ray the Black Owl, you can kill it immediately, all that removal becomes very difficult to use once they flip into 0 because you need to use 2 removal spells to kill anything. Final Battle is the only card right now that is going to help efficiently take care of a 0 board, or a board with 0 on it is what I mean by that. And like the only other thing like that is Tama. So you use Tama to get rid of the ability, and then you can use an actual removal spell. I think the card is super good just because it's good at protecting everything. J-Ruler Additions, like that's really relevant, I think. And then it's just blanket counter, like cancel targeted by a spell or ability. It's just universally gonna stop anything targeting. There's only a very small amount of cards that are gonna get through it efficiently. I think it's got a lot of utility. I like this card a lot. So next up, we're gonna talk about the efficient cards in the set. When you the most efficient cards, and I think there's a couple of them that really stick out to me, and this is like the most powerful or like largest group of cards. And again, like not to say that anything that doesn't fall into these categories isn't inherently good. There are some like X factors in determining like card power, but for the most part, like these tenets are going to help you identify super strong cards. So first up is Seal, the ruler, ancestor, the priestess, Phantom Wind Feasting. So the ruler lets you attach auras to it from your graveyard on the front side, and then it J activates for 1 mana. It has a slew of powerful effects to choose from when you J activate. It is cancelable all at one time by Lorite, but it still just has a lot going on. So if you're able to use discard or able to protect your J-Activate with a Fey or spell or a Lorite of your own, then you have a lot of things that you can do. The most important ones in my mind are the ability to draw 2 cards and untap 3 stones, and then after that you can make 2 4/4 tokens, or you can gain 1,000 life, and then it's even got more effects after that. It's like you have so many options to choose from. So I guess this is another instance of utility, but really like the efficiency is what I'm trying to like say makes this card so impactful. Like draw 2 cards, untap 3 stones for 1 mana by itself is nuts. When you get to do more things potentially on top of it, and then if they kill it, if you have 3 auras, it's imperishable. You can do it again. Like I'm not entirely sure what the deck is going to look like at this point in time, but I do think that there's just so like there's so much going on with this J activate that I have to assume that it's going to be good in some capacity. It just depends on what ends up happening with it, what people decide to deck build. I assume that it's going to end up being some sort of discard package, because when you get to look at their hand with Thought Control, Scorn, or Glint of Insight, and then get rid of Lorite, which is again the only counter that you have to this ability, then you get some really powerful effects. And you can also synergize with cards like if you really want to go like black-white, then you get Galapis to search your discard, and then you can get Karmic Retribution, so you can kill your own ruler. It has imperishable, you dump all your auras off of it, you reattach your auras, and you flip again and do it all over again. So I think that's kind of what I'm looking at as far as that deck's going to be looking like, but I just think it's a very powerful card because of how efficient it is. Next up, something that a lot of people actually kind of, I think, overlooked is Adam Seekheart, the Envoy of Valhalla. For those of you listening, this is the rabbit, the Valhalla rabbit. It is White and 2 to cast. It is a 0/1000 resonator. It says this card cannot attack or block. At the beginning of your main phase, you may remove target non-magic stone, non-J-ruler entity from the game. This is a card that demands to be removed. At the same time, it's not threatening enough to your life total that you really like care about removing it, but like it has to die because you cannot stick resonators to the board or stick anything to the board if this card exists on your opponent's field. So it has to be dealt with, but because it's a 3-drop, it can't be true bladed. So again, this falls in the category of like you need to run a lot of hard removal. My ideal format, my perfect world, is where every deck is running 4 Ray the Black Owl, 4 Adam Seacart, and you're just trying to get out as many rabbits as possible so you can like double tap their 0 so that it dies, and then all of a sudden all of your rabbits just turn online and then their stuff just dies. The rabbits start dying, they can't get through your 0. This is my ideal world. This is what I want to live in. But I think this card's super good. I think kill a card every single turn is it's just good. The fact that it can't block is kind of annoying, but I feel like that would actually make it kind of insane. Might be too slow for Keurig, and also even too slow for like the Lumia deck running Ataraxia City of Verdant Green. But let me live my life, alright? It's efficient, I will say that. Next up is Ground and Air Supremacy. This is just a card where you get to play a 2-drop for 1 mana. You are using an alternate resource using strength counters. You are essentially turning 5 strength counters into a will, and you're being able to play a resonator with that will from your deck. That is a very good effect. Because of the next card on this list, FoW Pig Squadron, you are able to more easily have access to your FoW Pigs, and because of that, you are able to replenish your strength counters more easily and consistently. So I think Ground Under Supremacy is a super efficient card, just because you're literally playing a card, like one of the best 2-drops, one of the strongest 2-drops in the game, because it's a 2-mana 9/9 for 1 mana. That's strong. And then because you also have like the reload on strength counters very easily, with FoW Pig Squadron being a very powerful card, yeah, you just got a lot going on there. And then FoW Pig being a 3-mana 8/8 is not efficient on its own, but when it dies, you get a FoW Pig, so it's replacing itself in a sense. And again, if we're saying that 5 strength counters is equal to 1 will, then when your FoW Pig Squadron dies, you get a FoW Pig from your deck, and then that card can banish to get 10 strength counters. So, you know, that's efficiently, or that's equivalent to 2 will if we're counting FoW Pig banishing itself to replenish your strength counters as 2 will. The FoW Pig Squadron is like, you know, is generating 2 will when it dies because you're getting 10 strength counters back. If you follow my math there, if not, it's not too important. I just think it's a good card, and because of its efficiency. Next up, we have Lorite's 7 Disciples. A lot of people were like either really freaking out about this card on the forums, or we're just like, what's going on here? I don't understand what's good about it. Well, first off, it's a 3-mana 7/7 with Swiftness that after it has Swiftness gets to have anything it needs. Oh, this is a utility card. Why did I put this in the efficiency section? Holy moly. But it is still efficient because you're doing a lot of stuff for 3 mana. So it comes down to the 3/3/7/7, 3-mana 7/7 with Swiftness the turn you play it, because the only thing you really care about giving it the turn you play it is Swiftness. So, you know, just give Swiftness to green. Why not? It's the color that does everything. But then after that, on your next turn, at the beginning of your turn, you don't have to give it Swiftness anymore. So you can give it whatever keyword you feel like giving it that fits the situation. So if they've got something that you need to kill, you give it Precision. If they've got a blocker that's also a 7/7, like a Rachel, then you give it First Strike. If they've got nothing going on, you give it Drain, or you give it +2/+2. Just again, utility, and then just the fact that it's got a lot of different abilities on it for 1 mana, and particularly in combination with Lorite. Lorite's a good card because of Keurig's ability to regenerate strength counters, because of Keurig's to activate, because of Lumia existing, because of the new ruler Seal / Feasting existing. I think Lorite is going to be a 3 to 4 of in most decks. So why not just throw in a 3-mana 9/9 with Swiftness, Drain, target attack, flying, fuck yourself, you know, the whole slew of abilities. So like, I think it's a very efficient card because you're already going to be running like 3 to 4 Lorite deep. And then last but not least, the Path We Part was something that kind of started my last video. It's the blue-red modal spell that costs 1 mana in Keurig and Shayla respectively, either red or blue mana. And it's just, yeah, dealing 600 damage for 1 mana is efficient as hell. Returning a Resonator to a hand for 1 mana is something we've already seen in like cards like Shayla's Return. And there's another card that just printed that like you can awaken with time mana. I don't remember it right now. I'm not gonna look it up. But yeah, dealing 600 damage for 1 mana is like the best that you can do. We've never seen a 1 mana card deal 600 damage to a Resonator before, and it's super relevant because I think it's going to impact how much Melfi is going to be played. Like the Lumia decks are going to look to beat the Keurig decks, and if Keurig decks are running the path we part, like we might not see like the Lumia decks run Melfi at all. Not like they almost aren't already because of stuff like Tama Trueblade, but this card's going to kind of push it over the edge. So those are my kind of card picks for like just in general strong cards and like why I evaluate them so highly. If you guys have any suggestions on what you think might fall in any of these categories that I might have missed over, feel free to leave them in the comments below, and I'll probably hit you back up and let you know why if I just, you know, I do think that card's good, it just wasn't as good as the other cards I listed, or if it's something I maybe overlooked, but you're absolutely right. So thanks very much for watching, guys. Hopefully my voice will get better tomorrow, and I'll see you then. Take it easy.